What's up, everybody? You are back on the other side with me, Mike G, and today I'm bringing you the real story of struggle and redemption. This guy has been a martial artist for most of his life. He currently fights in the BKFC, and a few weeks ago set the new world record for the fastest knockout ever. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you to the Warmonger, Justin Watson. How's it going, Justin?
What's up, brother? Doing pretty good. Snowing out there. You getting any snow where you're at?
2 days ago, it dumped 8 inches of snow and ice on us. We've been stuck at home ever since.
Phew.
Yeah, it
It's
was negative
not
four
common
degrees
for
in
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
Yeah, -4 this morning. Other than Alaska, it was the coldest place in the country, which is really odd.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's jump right into it. Talk to me a little bit about growing up. What kind of kid were you, man? Were you into stuff? Were you a bookworm? Tell me about you.
Yeah, man. Super ADD. Always getting into something. People were had to have eyes in the back of their head to make sure I wasn't jumping off something and getting hurt. But yeah, constantly just mischievous, just trying to get into something. And always bored. Looking for something to do. So that tended to get me into some trouble here and there.
You like to push the boundaries?
Yeah, that was kind of my MO.
Yep. So I'll see how high a branch I can jump off of and not get hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought so. Me too. Now, I know you've shared with me previously some of the struggles that you went through as a child. If it's not too difficult, share what family life was like for you growing up.
My mom was really young when she had me. She was 16. So she lived at home with her parents for a few years. My biological father was kind of in and out a little bit in the first couple of years, and then he just kind of disappeared. He was much older than her. And nowadays that would probably be he probably would have gotten in a lot of trouble for all that. But yeah, he wasn't around that much. And then so when I was about 4, my mom got remarried.
Right.
And that man ended up adopting me, and that's kind of who raised me.
Okay. All right. Moving on a little bit, teenage years, you lost your mind a little bit, is the best way I can describe it. I tried about 10 different sentences to describe that. That's the best way I can say it. Talk to me a little bit about those days. And do you think you acted out in those ways as a coping mechanism, as a way to kind of control your life amidst the chaos?
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of it was just kind of seeking attention. Like when
Sure.
you have a parent that's not around and doesn't feel like they wanted you or whatever, that's kind of tough.
Mhm.
So as a kid, I think a lot of us will do these things just to try to get attention and try to get what we're
Sure.
missing. What we didn't get from that parent. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was always super rambunctious. Like I said, I played baseball all through high school. I was really good. They thought I was going to go to college and go pro and all this stuff. And my family, we weren't rich by any means, but all the kids around me, they could go after baseball practice. They would go to the McDonald's or whatever and get something, or go to the store, or go to the track and play video games or whatever. And I just didn't really have any money like that, so I saw an opportunity to make some money as a young kid, and got caught trafficking in school as a freshman, and that really was the beginning of the real downfall. Got kicked out of school at that point, and yeah, things didn't really get much better after that.
How did that affect home life?
It was rough. Obviously, like I said, my mom had remarried, and my dad was. I had a brother that was my dad's biological son, and so for me, I felt like a lot of times I was kind of the outcast of the family. I was on the outside. They were all one unit, and I was kind of on my own. That's not how it was, but that's just how it
How it
felt, I
felt?
guess. So, but the more trouble I got into, the more that became a reality.
Sure.
And it's hard to love a kid that is constantly getting in trouble, and stuff like that, I guess. And so that caused a lot of tension between my family and my parents, and probably put a lot of stress on their marriage as well. And ultimately, I feel like a lot of that stuff ultimately just piled up and ended up destroying their marriage eventually.
Sure. I can sympathize with a lot of what you said. I remember as a child being told many times that I would seek out negative attention rather than have none at all.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Same kind of thing.
got you, man. Um, if it's all right with you, you shared with me a little bit about your mental health when you were a younger person. You were in high school, I believe. You were diagnosed with a whole handful of things. If it's okay, share what those diagnoses were and what you've done since then to, kind of combat them.
Yeah, so it really started. I mean, my mom and people around me say that they started seeing these signs really early now that they have learned more about it and stuff. But I started showing signs at 5 and 6 years old. I obviously was real bad ADHD, but then I also had an extreme panic disorder, anxiety disorder, and manic depressant. Um, and they, said I was bipolar because of all that stuff. And
Sure.
so my biggest thing was I think that it probably all stemmed from my childhood and feeling, like kind of left behind, I guess, and um, not wanted. But I was always felt like everybody was going to leave me, like the world was going to end and I was going to be by myself and nobody was
Right.
going to be there for me, and that could happen at any minute, So I would have these massive panic attacks that would come out of nowhere. And, like suicide has been something that has been really close to me my whole life just because of the anxiety. Like when you get in those moments, that's the only thing that it feels like can stop it, And,
Sure.
so, that was a lot of that. It was just, learning how to deal with that anxiety and the panic and learning how to cope with it. Obviously got on some medicine, and, that's a whole nother story in and of itself.
Yeah.
The way they have to try to figure out what works for you is not fun.
Yeah.
They put you on all kinds of medications and most of them don't work. Most of them make the symptoms twice as bad. And so, I mean, it's hell for 6, 8 months sometimes before you finally get on the right medicine that can kind of stabilize you. And luckily, I was able to find the right medicine around 14, 15.
Okay.
I had some doctors from that point on multiple times try to take me off of that and put me on other stuff. And I would listen to them and try it for a little while. But nothing else ever really worked.
Sure.
So I've been kind of on the same thing pretty much for over 20 years now. But many times in life, I would, be going through whatever struggle or whatever and couldn't get to the doctor or just
Mhm.
didn't want to go to the doctor or whatever, couldn't get my medicine refilled. And then so I would go back to drinking or doing drugs. And, I always felt like that was always a really good self-medicating tool for me. Not a good one. It just worked well.
Right.
As
One that
far as,
worked well for you.
yeah, as far as getting rid of the symptoms, it would mask it. If I could stay intoxicated, then I didn't have to deal with what was really going on in my head. It was a whole other mindset.
Yeah.
So then, that ended up coming back and biting me in the ass, and I got into a lot of trouble and faced a lot of consequences for that. And I guess after that, I figured out how to manage without the drugs and alcohol.
Right. Wow, that's wild, man. You get out of school, you're starting a life for yourself, and you meet a girl. Tell us what happened next.
Yeah, so my family had gotten really big into this church in our community, and they were like youth leaders, associate pastor, all that stuff. My mom was like the assistant to the preacher's wife, and all
Sure.
these things. And we got really deep into it. And a girl that I knew from the community, I lived in a small area, so even though I didn't go to school, I knew all the people that went to the local school. And so this girl came and we reconnected, and hit it off. When she got there, she had just found out that she was pregnant, actually. And so in the beginning, I guess, it was just fun kind of thing. And then fell in love. She already had a child that was 2 years old. So I fell in love with that kid, went through this whole pregnancy with her, and just fell in love with her. And we ended up getting married a little bit later. And then that lasted about 9 months or so. And she just wasn't content, I guess. She was looking for something else. So one night it was, she gets off at midnight or so, and starting to be later and later when she's getting home, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I figured out something's going on, and we separated from there. Um, that's back and forth like it always is. We rekindled and broke up again and got back together. And then
20
one of the
times.
times, yeah. And one of the times, things were going great and she gets pregnant. So my whole life has been, because of, I guess, I say family life, but it really wasn't a family life. It was just my dad, my biological dad, I think is the biggest issue with me. I mean, I have a really good family, but just those abandonment issues, I guess. My whole
Sure.
life, I've just always wanted a family. I always wanted kids and a wife, and so this was my dream had come true when she told me we were having a baby. So everything's great. We get back together, and through the months, I start hearing things, that had happened. Her friends coming to me and telling me these different things, and so then when the baby ends up coming, we do a paternity test and find out that wasn't my child, and so
Oh,
that was the end of that relationship for good. Um, like I said, she had two other kids, and they were one of them that she was pregnant with. I went through the whole pregnancy. I named the child. I cut the umbilical cord. She called me dad. I mean, that was my whole life, And then because of this whole thing, I don't know, it just was like these kids were just ripped out of my hands, and that really broke me again. Like
yeah, man.
I'd been doing good for several years, since I got in trouble in high school, and I figured out how to live straight, I guess. And
Hmm.
then when this happened, it just broke the whole
Yeah.
walls down again, and I just went full bore back into it.
Yeah, man. That's that story is similar to stories I've lived and stories I've heard from many people. I commend you. A lot of guys would have lost it in that moment and would be locked up right now.
It's
Honestly, there's plenty of them for it. Um, so yeah, I commend you for not going off the going off a different deep end.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, like you say, there was so much involved. There were friends of mine that were um, part of this situation, and
Right.
um, just that hurt on a whole nother level. So to not take that out, and that was the only thing I really knew in life was if you have a problem, the only way that I know to settle it is to fight. That's the only
Yeah.
you. You're probably going to be better than me. You're probably going to be smarter than me. You probably got more money than me. You probably can do all these things better than me. But there's one thing that I know we're going to be. I'm going to have
Yeah.
my shot, and so that is what I always reverted back to. And um, that it came to that a lot. There was a lot of violence, and I did hurt a lot of people. I just got really lucky in that time, not to get in trouble for it, I guess, and not to take it so far that there was no coming back from it. Obviously,
Yeah. I don't think it was luck. I, I think you
intervention.
were. Yeah. I think you're a special person, Justin. I really do. I don't. You can watch all of my interviews. There may be one or two that I've said that to someone's face. I really think there's something special about you, or you wouldn't be here.
I
For you to
agree.
have gone through every single thing you've gone through, there's a purpose behind it, man. There really is. 2009, you begin training to fight, and we'll get back to that. But this is the year that I guess you could say everything really went off the rails. Talk to me again about how drugs and alcohol took a hold of you again and the fallout from this go around.
Yes. So this was all like the same time. When her and I split up, I'd
Hmm.
always been into martial arts. In 2003, 2004, I started watching MMA, and my dad and my brother and I watched every episode of Tough One. We were huge fans, and
Yeah,
I always wanted to train. I always wanted to kickbox or box when I was young, and my parents just, I guess, because I was so rowdy and rambunctious and fighting anyway, they didn't think that would be a good idea to
make it
make me
worse.
better at it. Um, that we've learned a lot nowadays, and training actually helps with those kids, but
Sure.
they didn't see it. And so but they always knew that I wanted to do it. And so when all this happened with the divorce and everything, and they got me into the gym, uh, they it was basically a Christmas present. They got me like a few months membership to the gym and stuff, and but I was already kind of on that downward path. You know, you hear a lot of guys say that the gym saved them and brought them out of it. The gym that I was at, it wasn't the most family oriented gym that could be, you know, so there wasn't a lot of love in the place, you know, and I wasn't there for, 10 years either.
Right.
But once I started getting into trouble and stuff, you know, they kind of just washed their hands of me. And so that kind of put a bitter taste in my mouth a little bit too, I guess. But, you know, ultimately I knew that it was my fault and that I had to fix things, you know. So I ended up getting into quite a bit of trouble. I got a DUI, then I got into a fight. I got an aggravated assault charge where it was basically I thought it was self-defense. We were, messing around. He punched me. I kind of chased him across the street and punched him back. I threw one punch, but it landed right in the corner of the nose. So it broke his orbital, pushed his nose over here, knocked out some teeth. And it's a couple days later, the cops show up and arrest me for aggravated assault, class C felony, looking at 3 to 6 years in prison for punching this guy back. From what I taught, you know. I ended up getting really lucky on that. I think, I went to court and my public defender was, how they are. They're just trying to get in and out as fast as possible. So he's trying to get me to take a plea bargain, basically to do 2 years in prison and then 4 years on paper. And, I'm not I know how good time works and all that stuff. So like I can get the maximum sentence and I'm probably going to be out in 2.5 years and on paper. So that's the worst case scenario. So I'm not going to agree to that here in court.
Right.
So I said, no, we're not doing that. It gets bound over to the grand jury. And at the grand jury, it's basically the victim, the DA, and the grand jury deliberating to find out if they believe that they have enough evidence to indict you. If they think that they can convict, then they'll indict you. If not, they send back a no true bill, and the case is washed at that point.
Yep.
So we go to court in December, and that's when he's trying to get me to take these deals. And then in March, 3 months later, I get a letter in the mail saying this whole thing's been wiped out. So it was over. So I mean, that's one thing that I've always looked back at as kind of like how you say divine intervention, and I feel like this too. There's a lot of moments in my life, all the way up to just a month ago, where these things have happened, and I feel like that was one of them, because who knows what would have happened had I gone to prison. Who knows how I came out, or if I came out, or what
You'd
took
have
place
been in the hole for hitting people all the time, man. Everyone would try you.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, and that's just my MO. That's the only thing I know how to do. That's how I make friends. Is let's see who can fight the best. And then
right.
That's how people. That's how I've always made friends. And so, it wouldn't be good. I don't think. Jail.
I'm glad we went the Facebook route.
yeah. Jail was never good, but prison probably would have been a whole nother world. But then not long after that, still right after the divorce, I'm in the gym, but partying constantly, I'm pretty much drunk all the time, from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. If I have a little bit of the sober window, it was kind of when I was training, but it was a hungover window, and then as soon as I got out, I was drinking again. And so then I got another DUI, my second one, in Tennessee. On your second DUI, it's like 45 days in jail, and you lose your license for like 2 years, I think. So when I got arrested, I just went to jail and sat there in the beginning. I was like, I know that I'm going to have to do some time, so there's no reason to bond out or anything. I'm just going to hang out. Well, because of the aggravated assault charge, they had me in what they call medium. So you have population, and then medium is where they keep all the violent offenders, and then maximum where
Sure.
1 or 2 people there maybe. But in minimum or in medium, it's there's 4 cells in this pod, 2 upstairs, 2 downstairs, and in each one there's eight guys. You get 4 hours a day outside of that cell into the courtyard. So basically 20 hours a day you're in a 13 by 20 room with 7 other dudes. And that was because of this charge, basically, that I didn't even get convicted for. So I sat there for like a week, and I was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. So I ended up bonding out. And then when I went to court, they offered me a deal to go to rehab. And if I would go to rehab and complete this program that they had found, they would knock my charge down to a DUI first offense. So basically, as soon as I got done with the rehab, my life would be able to resume. I could get my license back, and all those things. I wouldn't have to go spend any more time in jail. Obviously, rehab was very similar to the jail, but this rehab that I was at in particular was a kind of a prison style rehab, but there was more freedoms than been in jail, and I knew that it was something I needed. I knew that my life was going bad, and I kind of, I told you this before, but it was almost self-sabotage the whole time. It was like, let's get as wild and as crazy as we can, and eventually you're not going to make it. Like I said, suicide's always been something really close to me, and I never wanted to do that. Like, one of the things that always brought me back from that was family. Like, who's going to find you? What's that going to be like for them? But if I went off the deep end and got in a car wreck at 120 miles an hour and died, and I didn't do that on purpose. So kind of a twisted way of looking at it, but it made it, that seemed like it would be easier for my family.
Sure. No, that makes sense. People have done that before.
Yeah. So that's just what I try to do, basically, is just be as wild as possible.
Go nuts and let the chips fall where they may, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought for sure, like, nothing's ever gone right. Like, I've tried to do things, and I feel like every time I make a step forward, I just get knocked back down. So I didn't really think I was supposed to be here, especially at that time.
Sure.
I thought this is going to be a lot easier for everybody if I'm not here. So when I got the opportunity to go to rehab, I took that mostly for the family, just to give it one shot, like, let's see what happens. And that rehab wasn't a great one. I mean, it's one of those places where you pay $600, they give you a bed. You kind of like detox for a couple weeks, and they put you to work in a thrift store, and you're working 10 hours a day, and then you go straight back to the thing. And drugs are extremely rampant. It was in the asshole of Alabama. In Bessemer, Alabama is just like one of the worst places in Alabama. Is wild, and the homeless population there was out of control, and so drugs were flowing freely because the homeless people would get them and bring them in and sell them and all that. So I got introduced to things in there that I had never even seen before, at home. And so that was, a wild experience. I'd always smoked pot my whole life. And so when I got in this trouble the last time, they had come out with that synthetic marijuana stuff. I don't know if you remember that or not.
K2
but,
or Spice.
Yep. And that stuff was like, it wasn't even like fake weed. It was more like smoking acid or something.
Yeah.
but so I had been doing that for a couple months leading into rehab anyway, because, I didn't want to fail a drug test or whatever. So when I got there, that was free flowing. And so it wasn't like really leaving home. I worked my way up. Anywhere I go, I've always kind of worked my way up pretty quickly. I'm a really hard worker. I learn really fast, and I'm dedicated to what I do. So within a few months of being there, I got moved from the thrift store over to the cafeteria and started running the kitchen. A friend of mine, his job was to go around to like Publix, Walmart, stuff like that, and expired food they would donate to us, and we would use it. So I would ride with him in the mornings. We'd leave at like 6 a.m. and go pick up stuff, and it was like a little bit of freedom that we had. It wasn't ever necessarily told to me that I was allowed to do that, but this stuff was coming into my kitchen, so it was easier. He needed help, so that's what we did. And nobody ever had a problem with it. And then eventually we went out one day, and another guy that was just a wild guy jumped in the van with us and took off. And that raised some flags, I guess. So they sent people out after us, pulled us out of the van, took us back to the rehab, and searched us and everything. And they said that they found a joint in the van, which wasn't true. There wasn't a joint in the van, but That's what they said. They wouldn't show it to us or anything. Wouldn't drug test us because they knew, even if it was, it wouldn't have been. We wouldn't have failed.
Right.
So they just kind of kicked us out. They had been trying to get this thing under control for a while, I think. And so I think they just saw a target and an opportunity and said, let's try to make an example out of these guys. And so they kicked us out. So I was stranded in Bessemer, Alabama, and had to catch a Greyhound back to Knoxville. That was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, especially with the anxiety and stuff. Like my big thing is like being stuck or being trapped or being left. And so being there was tough for me anyway because I have no car, I can't leave, I'm stuck there. And then now I'm not even stuck inside of a facility. I'm out on the street,
Yeah.
And so far away from home and nobody around and all that stuff. So that was I think I believe that God was definitely with me during that time just to keep my anxiety levels under control enough for me to be able to make it onto that bus, make it, make the stops and make it all the way home. Because it's not something I could normally do. I couldn't just go jump on a Greyhound bus and go somewhere. It's just not in with my conditions and stuff. So so then once I got home, I had started seeing this girl from my childhood, somebody that I grew up with. We went to school together, and we were just friends, but hanging out, doing what adults do. And she ended up getting pregnant. And so again, like I was super stoked. Like this is what I've been waiting for forever. The mom and I didn't get along the greatest. We weren't a great couple, but we decided to stick together at least until my child was 6 months old. At least let her come into this world with us as a unit, and come into a loving home, I guess. And we'll see how it goes. We're gonna try, work our best, but if we can't make a happy home, it would.
Right.
We both agreed that it would be better to have two happy homes than one chaotic, unhappy home.
Yeah.
So about 6 months in, we ended up splitting up, and that's the one thing I think that I can attribute really changed everything, I guess, is having her. Because then at that point, I had to live. Until then, I didn't have to. I could be gone at any time. But now it was like, it wasn't just me anymore. And I couldn't, if I took myself out, then I wasn't going to be any more for her than my dad was for me. So that really, at that point, I pretty much quit drinking, especially drinking to cope. I still will drink here and there, but the drinking to cope and the drugs to cope, kind of went out the window at that point because I knew that it could all be gone like that. That's what I've been working for all these years, was to try to make it end. And now I couldn't do that anymore,
Yeah. Man. This is another tough one. Fast forward a couple years, and I'm asking this question, which I know is difficult. I want to highlight how I told you when we talked before, how for the first time when something bad happened, you didn't immediately turn to coping mechanisms, drugs and alcohol. What happened on November 8th, 2013, and how were you able to find the courage to come out of the other side of that situation?
So like I said, my grandparents were a big part of my life. My grandpa was the biggest father figure I guess I really had growing up. Like I said, my dad was there, but we weren't getting along. So our relationship wasn't great. So my grandpa was always my staple. And he passed away. Then I had moved in with them a couple years prior because he had gotten really bad. My grandmother couldn't do it anymore. He was waking up in the middle of the night and he would walk outside and we'd find him out in the grass like laying down and stuff. And so then he ended up, the cancer ended up taking over. And we had to say goodbye to him. That was 2 days after my daughter's second birthday. So that was, if there was any positive to it, it was like he held on just long enough. And at that point, having my child, like I just knew that I couldn't go the same route that I had gone in the past. I had to handle it in a different way.
I'm sorry for asking that question, Justin. I know it was difficult. Um, I really want to highlight how part of the reason I do these interviews in a chronological, almost biographical order is to highlight these particular moments where you as the person struggling recognized in that moment, I got to change. And if you ever had an opportunity to go back to your old ways, this was one. And this is the kind of one that people don't even frown on that much. It's not like you're just out partying, having fun. A lot of people understand people having a blowout after something like this. So the fact that you were able to learn from your mistakes, grow, and not do the same thing, regardless of the reason, is amazing. And I commend you for that.
I'd been pretty lucky up until this point as far as death. It didn't really, it was never really on my front door. I mean, I obviously knew people who had passed away, but my family was really lucky that we didn't have anybody, no tragedies or anything up until this point. That definitely changed after this, but this was the first loss that I really had to deal with, and it was the biggest one I could have had.
Yeah, I was in my 20s when I lost my grandmother, who's the greatest human being who's ever lived, as far as I'm concerned. And other than that, I think maybe a dog growing up was probably the biggest loss that I had experienced. So, yeah, I've often wished I would have experienced something like that as a child, almost I know it sounds strange, but to prepare
No,
to deal with
exactly.
it as an adult, because I feel like it's easier maybe for a 4-year old to kind of deal with that than a grown person.
Yeah, I've tried to keep my daughter. Her mom and I kind of see this differently, but I've tried to keep her involved in those things. And when, like I say, we've lost a lot of people since then, and I've tried to keep her, making sure she's at the celebrations and at the funerals, and for that reason, just to try to get her. Right now, she has me. If she breaks, I'm right there. But
Hmm.
I don't want her to
Yeah,
face that alone later.
absolutely, man. All right, let's get into fight mode, Justin.
Uh,
uh, you began training, like we said, in 2009. How tough were those early days in the gym starting out?
man, it was
You
wild.
mentioned
Like
it a little bit earlier about not being cared about, but as far as being, I hear a lot of stories about guys being punching bags and that kind of thing. Is that how it
Mhm.
was for you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're
Okay.
not, especially if you're not like a friend, if you come in off the street and have, I don't think that I came in cocky by any stretch of the imagination. I knew that if I walked in that gym and got in a fight with somebody, I was gonna get my ass whooped. So it wasn't that I went in there thinking I was gonna be able to do anything, but I guess, I kind of had a reputation around the area that for being wild and fighting and stuff. So when I went in there,
Shocking.
they were like, yeah, yeah. So when I went in there, they looked at that as, let's just take it out on this dude. Um, and I don't know if I think that's the greatest way of doing it or not, but I definitely learned a lot of lessons, and it toughened my ass up for sure.
Well, you learn defense first.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, man. Starting out, you did both kickboxing and MMA. Why did you do both instead of just focusing on one?
Um, Striking has always been where my actual passion is at.
Okay,
Grappling, I don't, I wrestled a little bit in high school. I just don't love doing it. It's just too hard to be straight up with you.
gotcha.
Um, I think striking to me is a lot more visually pleasing.
Hmm.
You go out there and see a nice head kick. That's a whole lot better than just seeing somebody get mounted for 3 minutes.
Yeah. Ooh,
Um,
top position.
yeah. So I always had an affinity for the striking arts. But when I went to the gym, that's kind of how you started out at that time. Now you have guys that are starting out all encompassing.
Hmm.
But then it was much more one art at a time. And the gym that I went to did Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but they would prefer you to start in one. Starting
Okay.
in Muay Thai, and then you can add the Jiu Jitsu later or whatever. Um, but it's kind of wild, like the way that I ended up competing. I got into the gym before I ended up getting in all this trouble, getting sent off.
Hmm.
When I get back from there, I have my daughter, and once she's like actually, it's not too long after I got back. I guess I got back into the gym. Um, they welcomed me back, and we're happy to have me. And so I was back in the gym full time. And then when my daughter was 6 months old, and her mother and I decided to split up, it was kind of we hadn't been to court yet, So at that point, the mom just kind of makes the rules and dictates what happens, So basically, what she said was that after I got off work, I could come to the house and hang out with her until bed every day. And so that's what that's what I did. So I quit going to the gym because that she was my focus. That's what I wanted to be doing, was spending time with her. And that went on for a little while. We ended up getting court stuff worked out and everything, and it got better, obviously, but it got worse before it got better, and the visitation but became more rare and shorter lived and all those things. But I just worked and grinded and knew that I was going to have to make as much money as I possibly could and show a stable home, so that I could go fight for my daughter in court. And, I was willing to fight with everything I had. And so that's kind of what we did. And we ended up getting basically right out of court. The judge kind of told my ex at the time, like, you either go make an arrangement or it's going to be 50-50. So she ended up agreeing to a little over double what your average dad gets, I guess, kind of typical of every other weekend. So I was getting every weekend and then an additional week or an additional day on the off week.
Okay.
But still just didn't have time to train and stuff, and was working. And a guy that I worked with got a call to do a kickboxing match, like a sanctioned kickboxing. I'd done like some smokers and things like that before too, but to do an actual sanctioned kickboxing match. And he knew that I had trained in the past, and he was like, "Man, come do this with me." And I'm like, "All right, well, my original coach is the one that started this promotion." So I was like, "Look, they're not going to put me on this card." He wasn't happy that I made the choice to raise my daughter instead of train, and so he's not going to put me on the card. But if you can get me on there, I'll take a fight.
Okay.
A couple of days later, hey, we got you a fight, dude. All right. I'm about 150 pounds at the time. And so my first kickboxing match was against, at that time, this guy was the number one MMA fighter at 155 pounds in the state of Tennessee. He had been training and fighting for quite a while, but we were doing kickboxing, so whatever. We get to weigh-ins. I'm wearing a Carhartt. The fight's at 155, so I'm wearing like a Carhartt jacket, boots. I weigh in like 154, and he doesn't show up for weigh-ins. So later that night, we end up fighting. Yeah, we end up fighting. He's, I think, massive, obviously. But we're going, toe to toe for as long as I could make it. I cracked my shin a couple weeks before in training, and eventually I just couldn't stand up anymore and had to stop. But we get back to the back, and these guys that got me in the fight, they're like, "Man, that's the number one guy in the state. You just went, almost the whole thing with him, back and forth." And he weighed in 185 pounds.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So my old coach, he was willing to put me on the card, but it was he was trying to get me taken out, put me against the toughest thing he could. But it didn't deter me. There was a guy actually from his gym that I was wanting to fight next, and so I was kind of pissed off about the whole him setting me up like that thing. So I was like, let me fight this guy that he's one of your prospects or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And before my original fight, like they said, you fight Gib Fry, do this first one, and then we'll give you this other fight. Well, after the Gib Fry fight, now that other fight wasn't on the table anymore. The next fight I was offered was against Gib Fry's kickboxing coach, who was 6'3", 185 pounds. So at 5'7", 155 pounds, now I fight a kickboxing coach that's 6'3" and 30 pounds heavier than me.
Super fair.
Yeah, went to a decision with him, and we, that was a fun fight, pretty fun fight, and I think that really showed them that, I wasn't just going to go away. You can't,
Right.
a lot of guys, especially you see it with these promotions where they'll see guys who they're not a blue chip prospect. They don't have this backing and all the support. So they think, well, you're just a little nobody. I can step on your neck and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And, eventually you're just going to quit and you're not going to make it the whole time. Well, I'm just not that guy. And so, I kept coming, and, eventually started getting some matchups that were a little bit more even. I never got a fight in my weight class or anything like that, but still was able to get some wins and stuff, and string together a couple wins, and then the opportunity started coming in MMA, which is, I guess, where I really wanted to be was MMA, but I wasn't big on the grappling,
Right.
but that's where the attention was at. It wasn't, and still isn't, a big outlet for kickboxing or
Sure.
Muay Thai. Now you have one that's coming around and doing some big things, but before that, Glory and K1, and it was,
Yep.
those are small. There's a small number of people that are going to get in compared
Yep.
to the people who want in.
Yeah. They
So
don't have a
MMA,
roster of 900.
right. So that's why MMA was always the goal, is because I just felt like that's where I could make it at. There was an opportunity for me there.
Gotcha.
But during this whole time, for probably, I guess it was a few years period, I was just kickboxing and taking some MMA fights and not really training or anything. Like I was doing my own little cardio stuff as much as I could, but it wasn't enough.
Right.
And then not getting any actual coaching, not really developing my skills much. I've always been a really big student of the game, so I'm watching constantly. I'll watch YouTube videos, tutorials, everything, and so I pick up a lot of stuff like that. But without having a partner to practice it on
Sure.
and get the timing down, it just doesn't play out when you try to do it in the fight all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so so then I ended up. That was about the time my grandpa passed. I had gotten into a new gym, and then when he passed, I just kind of got out of it again, I guess. Um, let's see. Yeah. So when he passed, that was when I got into the new gym, and then he passed away, and then I just kind of quit going to the new gym, and let it fall to the side. And I had made friends with the promoter by then, and so a couple years later, he hit me up and recommended I start judging some fights and stuff. So
Okay.
for 5 or 6 years, that's all I did was just judge fights. And he had a podcast for the promotion is now it's called the Aries Fight Series in
Okay.
Tennessee. At the time, it was Valor, and Valor. Tim and I, the owner, had a show, the Valor Hour, where we just did, talked about the promotion, and we did bigger stuff too on every week, But that was kind of my way of staying close to the game, but kind of knew that my prime was gone, and the opportunity when I really had needed to take advantage of, I kind of missed it. But I always wanted to at least give it another go. I would never be able to live with myself if I didn't give it, one more go.
Yeah.
So around COVID time, I guess, we decided to take another fight. Got back into a new gym in North Carolina here, and started training. And at that time, my choices were kind of. Oh, sorry,
That's
little
all right.
thing there. My choices were kind of either go pro or fight an amateur at a pro level. Amateurs that are ready to go pro and not make any money, and you're fighting probably potentially a tougher fight as an amateur.
Yeah.
So I also had all the experience, judging. I'd been training for so long, been in the sport for so long. There were a lot of people that were going to look at it as maybe I was coming in and sandbagging if I came in and took an easy amateur fight. So we went pro. I've always wanted to fight the best. It's always kind of, I'm not here to take easy fights and cherry pick my way through. so when I went pro, we fought a guy that was at 155 pounds. He was 2-1 at the time, but he was a big prospect. The one loss was a Cook's decision where he lost to a hometown guy. And he was a grappler. So that wasn't the greatest idea, but I've never really made the best choices, I guess. So that fight, I was probably, just a one misstep away from finishing that fight. We got into an exchange, and like I say, he's a grappler. So when I hit him, he stepped back. You could tell he didn't like it. And he stepped back, and I thought for sure, okay, he's going to step back and shoot. So when he stepped back, I went in, threw a flying knee, and I thought he was going to shoot. And had he shot at that moment, money would have been highlighted. We would have made it right then. But he didn't shoot. He just took my back and choked me out instead. So, so that one came to a halt pretty quick. But I still was undeterred. I knew that that's not where I belonged in weight anyway. Like I say, I walk around at 145, 147 pounds. So to go up, and fight guys who are cutting down from 175 to 55, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but
when and why did you start thinking about bare knuckle?
I had really I would have done bare knuckle before going pro in MMA if the opportunity would have been there. I think, they started coming on the scene around 2018 or so. And pretty much as soon as I saw it, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. That, that kind of just goes back to my whole nature. It's just like,
right.
It's not really a boxing match. If you really watch them bare knuckle, it's a whole nother, it's a fight. Like it's not the same as a boxing match. And so I knew that, even though I don't have the skills, in the sweet science, that's not what we're doing here.
Right.
And so I knew that I would be able to excel in the sport, and it, also took away the grappling aspect of it. So I was always, anytime I saw somebody who knew anybody that, might have a way in, I was throwing my name out there, telling them I was interested in, and eventually, found somebody who was able to get me a fight with them.
Yeah, that was my next question. What was the feeling like getting the call that you'd be in the BKFC?
Man, it was
scary. Was it happy? Was it, oh shit, what do I do now? Well, it's a little different for everybody.
Yeah, for me it was. Oh, man, I was in shock, I guess. I was thrilled to death. Like there was the excitement. It was one of the more exciting times of my life, obviously. I never dreamed that I was going to make it to a big stage. I always wanted to do this and just see what I could do, but I just never really saw that happening. I knew, I've been around the sport for a long time and been, in the trenches with some of these guys, and I've seen guys get brought into Bellator with, as a B-side just to get walked through. But, at the same time, it's still a fight, and it's just the two of you in there. So you can bring me in to get beat up all you want, but that doesn't mean it, it's a fight. And so as long as it's a fight, I've got a shot. So that's, I signed with a guy that just could get me a fight, and sent me down to Miami. And, we were stoked, man. It was like a dream come true. I thought, I guess I thought, this is the first step, and it was ultimately the first step to really changing my life. But obviously things didn't play out the way I would have liked for them to. But it is what it is.
Right. All right. August 24th, 2023, you make your BKFC debut in Miami. Talk us through your emotions walking up to the ring for that debut and how that fight played out.
It was definitely a weird one. Out of all the fights that I've had, that was the most numb, I guess, I've ever been walking into a fight. Leading up to it, my cousin and I grew up together. He's 2 years older than me. He's my absolute best friend my entire life. Every day, every weekend, we were at each other's house. Our whole lives, for 36 years. And then about 3 weeks, he was like planning on coming to Miami with me. It was just, we've done every big thing that I've ever done. He's been a part of. And about 3 weeks before Miami, I went to his house. He had two daughters, and so we would go over there a lot. My daughter would play with his daughters, and we'd see each other. And when I walked in, I just saw something, knew something was up. He was like, he had texted earlier and said, you guys want to come over, you can, but I'm probably not going to get out. My nuts are feeling a little sore. And I was like, what? So when we walked in, I told my daughter, I said, ask him what's up with his nuts. And she made a joke, and he was like, oh, man. And when he turned around, I saw his stomach. And it was just, I mean, he was a tiny guy. He was, 120 pounds and really skinny guy, but his stomach was so blown up. I mean, he looked pregnant. And immediately I knew what it was. I had recently lost two friends to liver cancer, or their liver shutting down.
Cirrhosis.
Yep. And so as soon as I saw his face, saw the yellow, saw the position of the swelling, I just kind of lost it, and I was like, look, you got to go to the hospital now. He had been getting pressure from his family too, but finally a couple of days later he went, and that's what it was. His liver was shutting down. But they found out that he did drink a lot, but it wasn't, at his age, it was way too damaged to have been even possible. Like, it wouldn't have been possible to have drank as much, they said. And so they found out that he actually had an autoimmune disorder that had caused this. So if you're a massive alcoholic and you just drink yourself to death, you don't really qualify for a liver transplant. There's a long list, and they're not going to put you in the front of the line because you have to show some that you're going to not just go and ruin that one too.
Yeah.
So, at first we're kind of just defeated, like, man, they're not going to give him a liver. They think that he just drank himself to death.
Yeah.
And then we find out that it's actually this. And so there's some hope, they're going to try to see if he qualifies for a transplant, do the tests and everything. I'll, immediately said, you can get part of your liver taken out and donate to someone. And both of you kind of survive, so I was immediately throwing my name in there for that. But part of it, they had that swelling. So they had to go in and relieve the pressure off of his liver. And when they did that, somehow they made a mistake and clipped his bowel in the process and didn't notice or realize that they had done it. So they sewed him back up. He got extremely sick. Sorry, it was sepsis because he was, he basically was leaking poison into his body. They mentioned that may be the case, and that maybe tomorrow we'll open him up and see what the deal is or whatever. And that night his blood pressure dropped to, I think it was 10/0. So pretty much non-existent. And then that was the last time that we saw him in, when the day that he got that surgery, when he was sick afterwards, that was the last time that we saw him coherent at all. He was still out of it, and sick and stuff, but he could at least talk to you and everything. And then from that point on, he was brain dead. But they didn't tell us that. They just they didn't know. I guess they just said, his body's fighting the sepsis. He's going to recover. We're just going to keep him. He was on a ventilator, but the ventilator was only breathing like 1 out of every 8 breaths for him or something. So his body still was breathing on its own. But the ventilator was just there as a precaution. So they get him a liver, send him to Nashville, to Vanderbilt Hospital to get a transplant. They send like a big, I don't know if you've ever seen the way they do these transports, but it's like a tractor trailer. It's like $1 million that it cost them to transport him. They had a whole surgical team on board. And then they get to Vanderbilt, and the first thing that they do at Vanderbilt, obviously, is an MRI. And they find out that he's been brain dead for days. And this whole thing was kind of pointless. Then his family, kind of had to make that choice to pull the cord. And then, I was making my debut a couple weeks later. So, my head wasn't really, not that it wasn't in the fight. I was ready to kill somebody. I was ready to take out every bit of anger I had, but
sure.
The feeling of walking to the cage or to the ring that time was definitely different. There wasn't any. I mean, I was just dead inside. I didn't. There weren't any nerves or anything like that. It wasn't a lot of excitement. It was just
Just going through the motions,
yeah,
kind of.
yeah. That was tough. That one was really tough. The weight cut was terrible for that fight because I wasn't training. I was coming back and forth to Tennessee every couple of days because I wasn't going to miss the last breath he took.
Yeah.
And so I get down there and we end up having to cut like 6 or 7 pounds the morning of weigh-ins, which was miserable. It was hell, but got it done. And when I walked up to this crazy, but when I walked up to weigh-ins to the room, my opponent is in there and he's getting his clothes back on. So I see he's already weighed in and I'm like, okay, he's done. I get on the scale, 135.6, made weight. I'm, just ecstatic. I thought for sure I was still going to be over. But I'm happy we go get something to eat, go to weigh-ins later that night for the ceremonial weigh-ins, and I'm on stage. They call me out. I walk up on stage, and they're calling him out to walk up to face off. And they say, D'Amico Lobin weighing in at 139.6. And I'm like, wait a minute.
That's
This
not the
dude,
same.
this dude missed weight by 3 pounds, 4 really, and nobody even like. I could have not killed myself this morning. I could have still been. He could have just let me know, and we could have met at 140 and have been good.
Yeah.
And so apparently he went in, got on the scales, and said, "I'm not going to cut any more weight. This is what it is." Walked out, and nobody thought it was necessary to tell me about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you at least get a percentage of his purse?
Not really. It was because that's part of it, because you get when that happens, the commission comes to you in any 99 point every situation. The commission comes to you, the promotion comes to you. You have the choice. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. The contract you signed is not valid anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to give you a new contract, and this new contract will have those stipulations on it. Well, because I didn't know any of this stuff, we get to weigh-ins, and I mean, what choice do I have? Just say I'm not going to fight him. So I'm, trying to figure out what I'm going to get and all that stuff. And I ended up, I think the way it ended up working is that I paid my manager a little bit less than what I should have. So I maybe made a couple $100, but I think that it came out of my manager's pocket, to be honest with you.
Wow. All right. November 3rd, 2023, you have an opportunity to avenge that debut loss against Michael Larimore. What were your thoughts going into that fight, and help me understand the somewhat strange ending?
That was another weird one, man. I mean, I feel like this comes across as I'm making excuses, and I'm really not. I train to be able to beat the best guys in the world on my worst day, and if that doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. I mean, there's no excuse for that. I lost the fight.
Yeah.
But on this one, we are scheduled again at 135. And on the fights on Fridays, a lot of times for BKFC, the fights are on Friday night, so weigh-ins on Thursday. I fly out on Wednesday. Tuesday at about 5, 6 o'clock, I get a phone call. Hey, your opponent's passport didn't go through, so he's not going to be able to fight. But we still want you to get on the plane. We're going to find somebody. So come to Orlando. So, okay, whatever. I went to Orlando.
Sure.
I get there, and on Wednesday evening, I still don't know what's going on. I'm like, in Atlanta or in Orlando, not knowing if I've got an opponent. I'm in the hotel, and I get a call. We found somebody. So I said, okay, whoever it is, I'm here. I'm fighting. I have to make, I know what is my potential is, and I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, cool. They found Michael Larimore. Michael was already scheduled to fight also on Friday or Saturday in an MMA fight at 145. So he was already preparing, and the same thing. His opponent fell out the week of. He had some teammates on the card, so it was just an easy one to get in there. So we do the fight at 142, which is fine, but just still not in my weight class, obviously. But whatever, it is what it is. I think that it's probably going to play out to be a pretty fun fight, back and forth for as long as it lasts. I don't think that he's going to be able to make it the whole time. Just when the the couple of times that I did touch him, I could tell the reactions by the reactions that I got that if I really land, I'm going to be able to end this thing. But for now, in the beginning, it seemed fun. So we're just jumping back and forth, going crazy. Somehow, I don't know if a punch landed. I don't know if it was. We got into a couple of clinch exchanges where we like slammed into each other kind of hard, but my collarbone right here popped out right in the middle. I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't really feel it. I knew something kind of felt funny, but you're in a fight. It wasn't a big deal. But I hit him with the right hand, and he kind of like started stumbling backwards. But when I threw that right hand, I felt that something was off. So I started spamming him. I threw like 3 more right hands in a row, and I couldn't even hit him. It was like I couldn't get my extension out. It wasn't fast enough. There was no power. I was like, man, what's going on? So I kind of back up. He comes forward. He lands a jab. And I just like, I got to figure out what's going on. So I take a knee. I know, this isn't something I'm used to, but look, in this sport, if you need a second, you can take a knee, recoup, and it's a smart thing to do a lot of times.
Yep.
So I did that. First time I'd ever done it. And I'm kind of, I don't know, I guess I didn't do enough research and watching beforehand, but I kind of expected, he's going to come over. I'm going to see the ref. He's going to say 1, 2. I'm going to have all that time. Well, when he got to me, he says 6, 7, and I jump up immediately. And you can see on the video plainly that I'm on my feet at 8, ready to go. And the commentators are making comments about it being a little quick, like he was a little quick on the count anyway. And then he just waved it off. I don't know if he saw the injury, or what. He said that I just stood up too late, but that one's haunted me ever since, man, because it's like that opportunity just got stolen away from me. And I had this injury, and I mean, I guess a lot of people would probably think, hey, the fight should have been stopped. You had a dislocated collarbone. But if he didn't know that, I wasn't indicating that I was hurt. I was indicating that I was ready to go, and I can still win that fight. I can switch stances. I can still jab with my right hand. I just don't have a ton of power.
Yep.
But I've still got all the power in the other side. And I go very well back and forth between orthodox and southpaw. So I'm, still 100% confident that I was going to go back out there and finish that fight just from southpaw position, and just didn't get the opportunity. So that one was pretty rough. When I got back into the back, I still didn't know what was going on. I had to get some stitches on my eye, and I told the doctor, I was moving it around. I felt it like popping some. And I was like, I think something's up in my shoulder. And he just glanced over and was like, oh, yeah, your collarbone's broken. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, that's 100%. Your collarbone's broken. And I was like, wow. I was like, it doesn't feel like that much pain. It just don't have any motion in it.
Yeah.
And he called like 3 or 4 of the other ringside physicians in there. And they're like, oh, yeah, it might not be broken, but I've seen 500 broken ones. And that looks just like all of them. So, they said, when you get home, you don't have to go tonight. There's not going to be much they can do about it tonight. But when you get home, just go to your doctor and they can do whatever. It popped back into place somehow in the next few days. And when I got to the doctor, it had relocated itself, and there was still some swelling, and it was still a little bit off. But it ended up just kind of going back in the way that it was supposed to. But I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, that you could dislocate your collarbone here in the middle. Like, you feel underneath your throat, you can feel where both sides come into each other. And I didn't realize that's, I guess there's kind of a joint there, and it pops right out.
Yeah. I've watched so many fights. I'm never surprised at what can break, what can get torn loose, twisted, cracked, snapped. Yeah. All right. Everyone in the fight business, from promotion owners to new fans, know about your most recent fight, BKFC 69. You took on Cole Farrell. Holy shit, man. Tell us what happened in the ring and that night, and the record that you now hold that will most likely never be broken.
I think there was a lot to this fight. It was obviously up at 145 pounds, and so now my third fight, still back up, still can't get a fight in my weight class. And Cole was a pretty big prospect. He was 11-1 professional MMA, all 11 wins by finish. I think maybe all first round finish. And then 1-0 in BKFC with a finish. In my region, everybody kind of knows who Cole is. He's not necessarily the most loved guy in the region by the athletes for one reason or another, but it's kind of a fight that I had seen years ago when he was on a run in MMA that intrigued me because I felt like definitely in the striking department that he didn't have the skill set. And I thought I could take him out. So when I got the call to do this in a hands only type affair, I knew immediately that this is the one. Okay, like you thought that the time was before, but this is your opportunity right now. So I would go in there as I think on BKFC, like on the show, they had me as like a plus 938 or something underdog, but it was higher than that other places. I mean, it was up to like a minus or a plus 1200, so 12-1 underdog going into that fight, and yeah, nobody really gave me any chance, but I knew also not only did I know that this was the opportunity that I was going to be able to take advantage of, but I knew that just winning the fight didn't mean a whole lot for my career because I've fallen and stumbled and whatnot so much. Even though there's a prospect and I'm taking out somebody, it's like, you know, you're gonna have to do something special, or to put a spotlight on yourself.
Sure.
If I just go out there and win, then it's a win.
Yep.
I might get called back. A couple people are gonna see it. It's gonna be cool. But if I want to make myself invaluable, then I got to do something special. So I envisioned it for weeks and weeks and weeks coming into it. I watched the fight play out exactly the way it played out 5,000 times in my head, from the punch landing to watching him face plant to slitting the throat. And like I said, nothing in my life has ever worked out the way I thought it was going to, or planned for it to. But that night, all the stars aligned, and it went exactly to a T, like I had been envisioning it. As soon as the referee says go, I didn't hesitate. I jumped and swung. Yeah, I was doing minutes of it, and I got one down like really, really slow. And I mean, like from the time that he says go, at 0.03, you can see the movement start from my side. So I mean, it's going to be so incredibly hard to beat that. Just to be able to touch somebody that fast, and then to touch them one time and completely shut their lights out. There was a little bit of criticism online saying he wasn't actually knocked out. It was a TKO, yada, yada. But if you've ever been in a fight, or if you've ever fallen down face first, you know that you automatically put your hands down. It's not. There's no way to fall face forward and not catch yourself.
Yeah.
So if you fall face forward and you kiss the mat and your hands are behind your back, that's because you're asleep.
You're out.
Yeah.
You're done. Yeah.
And a lot of times, multiple punches, we see guys wake back up from multiple punches. Well, it's the same thing with that. He hits the mat. I mean, the sound of his face bouncing off the canvas was almost as loud as the punch.
Yeah.
And so it was like another concussive blow right away, and that just kind of popped him right back too. But yeah, it was a clean knockout. And that's what's going to make it so hard is putting them to sleep, because like I said, you see the referee start one and then looks at him. He's like, okay, I don't need to do that. Yeah. And so it's very rare that you see refs not count. It was a fantastic job by my referee. I give him all the credit in the world too, because had he not been on his game, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
If he would have counted that out 3 more seconds, 2 more, 1 more second, then it wouldn't have made the headlines that it made.
Yep.
But and I talked to him the next morning and was like, man, I told him the night before when we were in the locker room, he said, he was going over some stuff with me, and a lot of times the refs will kind of like have you walk around a little bit, and they kind of get an idea of your kind of your gait when you walk, and how you carry yourself, so that if you're concussed or a little spun up, they can tell, and then they'll know. So I was like, I'll walk for you, but I'm telling you, he's going out fast. Like, it's not going to be long, and you're going to be waking him up. And
Right.
so the next morning, he was like, "Man, you called it. I was waking him up just as fast as we got in there." And so that was cool. I had the night before at weigh-ins, at ceremonial weigh-ins, he he kind of got to me a little bit, I guess. He he piped up. You know, they always give you all the kind of like procedure and tell you how everything's going to play out. And so he raises his hand afterwards and he was like, "Hey, where do you guys need me to be for the post-fight press conference? What time is that? And where do I need to be?" And I was like, "Bro, you're not going to the post-fight press conference." And there's 50 people in there, all athletes, fighters, and BKFC staff, and he lost his freaking mind. And he like came after me and everything, and I'm just sitting back, relaxed, chill, because I know tomorrow night I'm ending you, and you can be as mad as you want right now, but you're not going to get me to do anything at this moment, because I know if I wait 24 hours, I'm going to get paid, and the whole world's going to watch it.
If he
And
would have hit you in that moment, would you have chased him down and hit him back?
yeah, probably would have been hard not to. Probably,
I didn't
probably
know
been
if
really
you'd
hard
be
not
like,
to.
oh yeah, I did this before.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would have been able to get to him. There were so many people like jumping in as soon as he came at me. I mean, if you watch the weigh-ins, you can't see it on from BKFC's coverage, but one of the guys, he runs the fan page, Russ Maxim. He recorded it from an angle, and at his angle, you can see when I go up to Cole, Kevin Smith, G Perez, a couple of people run up from backstage, like getting ready because they just know that it's about to pop off. But I knew that I wasn't. I knew that it wasn't going to, and I knew, for one, I knew he didn't have the balls to do anything, and I knew that, I know I'm gonna get to do it tomorrow, so I'm not doing it right now. So that's what, I think there was a pretty epic little clip from BKFC of weigh-ins where I walk up, and I'm just staring through his soul, and I think he knew right then that it wasn't going to be the night that he was expecting, and I think you kind of saw that even like in his stance, in just the way he was carrying himself, different stuff. I think you can see that he knew that things were about to go bad before it happened. He made a comment about, he had a funny stance that he never really has, and that's true. His stance did look a little odd, but when you're scared, you do weird shit. And so, I think he honestly got lucky, man. If you watch it slow down and everything, he throws a jab, and I throw more of a rangefinder than a jab. I just kind of stick it out there just to see how close I am when I jump. But when he throws his jab, he kind of runs the opposite direction, leans his head down. So I kind of have to hook the punch and to chase him with it. Had he been like looking at me and that thing hit him square in the face, brother, it would have been
Broken orbital, broken nose, broken
it would have
teeth.
been really bad. It would have been really,
Yeah.
really bad. So I think he got super lucky that it landed where it landed, to not do, a lot more damage.
Looking towards the future, what do you want to do next?
Man,
You want to stay with BKFC?
ultimately, I think BKFC is, all the eyes are on BKFC. So, it's like going anywhere else is kind of like going backwards, or going to the minor leagues in a way. But at my age, it's kind of a little different for me. For these younger guys who've got, all these years ahead of them, they can take these fights against nobodies and make no money for it. And, they still live with, still got their parents to take care of them and all that stuff. So it's not a big deal. But for me, just the eyeballs on me, the attention that I get, that doesn't, I can't survive off of that. So, I love BKFC. I love what they're doing as far as the production that they put on. I think, it's top notch production, and but if I have an opportunity that takes care of me and my family, then I'm not gonna just stay at BKFC because it's BKFC. I think you can, if anything, it's harder to make a name for yourself there than at a smaller organization. I can if I went to a small organization, they would probably pay me twice as much as BKFC just to have that name and the name value. The same way that BKFC does with these former UFC guys. But I think that in my opinion, I think that's the biggest downfall with them right now is that they're not investing enough into the guys that are really building the company. Instead, they're outsourcing it and spending all the big money on these guys who are only going to be there for a fight or two,
Right.
and aren't they didn't make their name there. They didn't, you're just kind of coattailing off them.
Yeah.
I think ultimately that just becomes unsustainable because you haven't invested in the talent that's going to be around. So now when these big names are gone, nobody knows who the guys are that have been holding it down this whole time because you've been focusing on them, or these guys who have been busting their ass and just not getting what they deserve are going to go other places, and so so I don't know. I mean, like I say, I think for me, I would love to make enough money to be able to survive
Sure.
and be with the BKFC. That ultimately that would be my goal. But I'm going to do whatever pays the bills at this point. I feel like I have a lot of value now. Even though it's one moment that I've got. It's I don't have a Dustin Poirier career or a Eddie Alvarez career, but I have a moment that they don't have.
They'll never have.
Right, and so I know that there's value there, and I know that the right promotion, the right management, the right people behind me pushing me. I mean, we can go on a 7-8 fight win streak, and we can blow up and make tons and tons of money together. But I'm not gonna make tons and tons of money for somebody else and me be struggling. That doesn't make any sense. So it's just whoever sees the value in me is where you'll see me at next. I think. We're in talks with some different people and just seeing what doors are open, and there's definitely a lot of people that are interested and that want to work something out. So we're trying to get something going as fast as possible. Like I said before, I'm 37, I'll be 38 next month. So I feel like because of the way that my career went, and taking time off and taking time away from the sport and not competing, the fact that I don't have 50 pro fights, I don't have the damage that I could have at this age. That's going to allow me a little bit more time, but it's still a young man sport, like this, for instance, the other day I got a message from Nathan Rivera. You know who that is? Okay. So Nathan reached out to me. He's like, "Hey man, I know we both have managers, but I'm trying to get on this card. I need somebody to fight. Nobody will take the fight. Would you be interested in doing it?" That kid's a stud, like he's super nice, super respectful, but that's, that's going to be a tough fight to say yes to. Like, there's a 25-year-old future champion. I'm 38 years old. We need to book fights correctly. There's plenty of guys my age and in my range, and I'm not saying that I think that I lose to Nathan Rivera. I think that I can finish anybody in the world. He's extremely talented, much bigger than me, much longer than me. And so it's going to be a hell of a fight, hard fight. But again, that's not really what makes sense. And so, I think somebody's going to figure out pretty soon the way to actually push this and the way to market it. And I think that we'll be able to reach the moon if we want to, whether that's at BKFC or somewhere else. I've got some promotions even overseas, like in the Balkan and in the Middle East they're doing promotions where they're kind of like doing one FC type things where they're doing multiple aspects of the sport, and they're wanting to get, bring some bare knuckle people in. And, right now I'm a big name in that spot. So, and I, don't plan on that changing anytime soon. So I want to fight again as soon as possible because I don't have a ton of time left. And, but I'm not going to I've always been the guy who says yes. Like period. I'm not saying no to anybody. And if you look at my record, you see there's not a slouch on there. There's,
Mm-hmm.
like the worst record opponent that I have. He was upside down, but he was my second fight, and I was his 12th pro fight, and up 2 weight classes. The guy had fought freaking Borshov, whatever his name, from Team Alpha Male.
Mm-hmm.
He fought Jake Schilling. Like, the experience. Like, this wasn't a pushover, even if he's
Right.
upside down. So, and I'm still not trying to take a pushover fight. I don't want to fight somebody that doesn't deserve to be in there. But I also shouldn't be a 12-1 underdog in my next fight. You know what I mean? Like,
Nope.
so it should be evenly matched. And if I'm evenly matched, then I'm gonna continue to make amazing moments and capitalize on all those opportunities.
Oh yeah.
It's just about being patient, I think, right now.
Yeah.
It's been tough for me because I'm that guy that I want to fight. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, this is how I pay for my life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when I took this last fight, I quit my job because I knew this was it. I had to focus on this. And at this level, you can't work. I've been in construction forever. You can't work 13, 14 hours a day in the sun carrying lumber all day long and then go to the gym and train with 21-year-old collegiate
Nope.
wrestlers and then expect to compete against these high level athletes.
Yep.
So I said, you know what? I know that my bills are going to pile up. I'm going to go in debt. But I know that I can do something special enough that it will pay off,
Mm-hmm.
and all that'll be taken care of, and I'll be able to survive a few months and make it to the next camp. That definitely didn't happen, but that's still the goal. Is
Gotcha.
to be able to train full time, and I know that if given that opportunity, I'm going to be unstoppable, and the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
We can go as far as this thing will let us go. And again, I'll fight anybody in the world. There's not a man on this planet that I'm not willing to get in there with and give it everything I've got. And I can surprise a whole lot of people many, many more times. Um, you know, it's hard for me because, like I say, I haven't. This is kind of crazy too. I mean, I was told right away that I was going to get a contract, a multi-fight deal with BKFC.
Mm-hmm.
And I still haven't gotten that, which is weird to me. But they have called or through my manager, so I don't even know if it's necessarily them or my manager's just saying, "Hey, we need a guy," and he calls me. But I've gotten like, "Hey, you want to come to Mohegan Sun this weekend and save a card? It's Wednesday and the fight's Friday." No, no, I don't want to do that. Or hey, you want to come fight the number 4 guy in the world for what you made in your last fight?
Nope.
No, that doesn't make sense. So I've had to be really patient and not jump on those because normally I would say, yeah, let's go. I'll be in Connecticut tonight. And it's really tough too because like in that fight in particular, I think I would have gotten another highlight, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't training. I was in this car accident not long ago, as you know, and I've got some injuries still from that. So I'm trying to get all those taken care of before I get back in there. But it's hard for me to say no, man. It's hard for me not to take every opportunity that comes my way. Like we said, we talked about some of the people that I've lost in the past, and one thing that we didn't really talk about is this little girl that I trained for a while. Her dad is one of my best friends. He's my corner. He's in my corner at every fight. We've been close training partners for years. And she was diagnosed in 2023 with stage 4 cancer. I can't even pronounce the name of it right now, but it was basically like a small tissue and bone cancer. And stage 4, they say you've got like less than 20% of those people will make it 5 years. So this girl, man, the biggest inspiration you could ever meet. Like, never was phased by it, never had a bad day, never let it keep her down. She was always in good spirits. And she beat it for a little while, and she went through chemo and completely was in remission. They couldn't find even a trace of it. But you know how cancer is. And so it came back with a vengeance. And we lost her. It's been 1 year. A couple weeks ago, we had our little celebratory day for her at the gym. And that's the little girl lost so many opportunities, um, and the same with my cousin. So because of that, it's really hard for me to say no to any opportunity at this point. I want to take advantage of them all, and I want to keep pushing their name out there and getting, making people. I don't want anyone to ever forget these two people. They're super super instrumental in my life, and I had visions of walking. The little girl's name was Roswell. I had visions of walking Roswell to the cage. I mean, she loved to fight. She would be in there training all the time, hitting pads. She would, if she wasn't training, like once her cancer had gotten to a point where she, had a hard time walking and moving around and stuff, she would still want to come to the gym, and she would be sitting next to me coaching the kids. They'd be going, she'd be telling them, pass, 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 and trying to coach them through positions and stuff like that. And even at the very end, I mean, like a week or 2 weeks before she actually passed, her dad is doing a tournament, and she's sitting in the coach's chair, hollering at her dad, and never a sad day. And I don't know many people that could do that, in such a tough time. So losing her, losing her was another big one for me that that told me, I'm here for a reason, and I'm not going to let that reason pass me by. Like, I could have been gone a long time ago and should have been probably, but for some reason I'm not. We get even down to this accident that happened in December. 3 weeks after the fight, we're all coming home from Tennessee back to North Carolina. My mom and stepdad in the truck in front of me, and me, my girlfriend in a vehicle behind us. We come up to a stop, like some traffic. There was like a little fender bender ahead of us, and so we stop. My stepdad stops. I stop. My girlfriend stops, and a Supermax truck comes creaming through everybody, hauling a trailer, and hits Penny into me, into my stepdad, just kind of accordion style. And the way that if you just like see the drawings and how it played out, when he hit her, it kicked her to the side just enough to where she hit the corner of my car to kick me just enough to not accordion. I mean, I had like a Chevy Sonic, like a little smart car looking thing, Yep. Had she hit me dead on in the back, I would have. She had a Bronco, and the truck in front of me was a F-250. So I would have been smashed in between those two, and there's no way that I would have made that. Or if I had lived, I would definitely never be competing again. I mean, I would have been mangled. That thing would have really crushed me. But again, it was just one of those times where God's just moving the chess pieces just enough to where I was able to walk away. And I do have some injuries that we need to get looked at, but man, it could have been. We could have, me and Penny both should have lost our lives that night. And
I'm glad you didn't, man.
Yeah, the fact that we didn't was just one more example of there's something still coming. Don't give up. Even after the fight, there's been some discouraging stuff happen after the fight that made me think, it could make people think, like, man, this isn't even worth it. But it might not be, but something else is. There's something else. It might not be. It might not be that I'm, I don't have any desire to be rich and famous and stuff like that. I would like to be able to go to a restaurant and not worry about what I order off the menu, and then we're golden. I would like for my daughter
take a friend.
I would like for my daughter to be like, "Hey, Dad, I'd like to get these new shoes," and I could just be like, "Cool."
Deal.
But but I'm not. I'm not trying to be like massively rich or anything. But I could never get to any of those points. But maybe all this is just so that one person can hear this, and that pushes them to the next step, and maybe they're the next Muhammad Ali. Maybe there's no telling what the purpose is and how little or how big it may be. I know for a fact that there's something, and I'm gonna keep pushing and keep fighting, and there's nobody that can hold me down and stop me.
Where did you get the nickname Warmonger?
I kind of, like I said, I was always looking for a fight. That's just I'm just always kind of looking to scrap, I guess, like
Gotcha.
even like with sports and stuff, to me, you play one-on-one basketball. Okay, well, you beat me in basketball, but the real sport to find out who the better man is the fight.
Yeah.
So let's do that. How about we do that? You want to play
Yep.
basketball? I want to fight. And so that's and then never backing down from a challenge and
Hmm.
never giving up and never quitting. I think that kind of just encompasses that
Yeah.
Viking just kind of come in and take over type thing. Like um, you know that kind of puts a kind of a negative light on it. I guess I'm not like a bad guy, I guess, but at the same time, when it's time to fight,
Hmm.
when you see me walking into the circle, I'm coming to kill whoever's in there, and I don't
Hmm.
want if the referee doesn't stop me, that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
He has a job and I have a job, and when it's time to go, I'm coming in there for war, and I'm looking for
Hmm.
an absolute war, and I want to fight the best of the best, and I want to prove myself. Um, and so yeah, that's kind of what it came from.
Awesome, man. Um, these next few questions, this is kind of my pick one and why section. These are goofy questions. I promise some of them you will never have been asked in an interview before. Some of them you may think I'm an idiot, but I'm going to ask them anyway because this makes you just like everyone else. I want to know how we're similar, how we're different. What do you like better, pulled pork or brisket?
Brisket.
There you go. You like burnt ends?
I like burn ends. Yeah, I don't like a brisket that's real fatty. I like like
Hmm.
it depends on where you get it. Sometimes brisket's like almost 90% fat, and I
Yeah,
like burnt ends where it's like crispy. That's my favorite.
crispy on the outside and candy in the middle.
Hmm.
Well, if
Yeah,
you're ever in Northwest Arkansas, man, when I'm not interviewing inspirational fighters on YouTube, um, I work in a world championship winning barbecue restaurant every day, and I'm elbow deep in pulled pork, ribs, brisket, all that good stuff. If you're ever this
nice.
way, let me know. I will hook you up, man.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, both in their prime. Who wins, Tyson or Ali?
I think Tyson. I think that's just a hard bulldog to stop. I think
Yep.
that technically, if you want to talk about technical skill for skill, Muhammad Ali was more technically sound than Mike
Hmm.
Tyson. But again, the dog is a different animal,
Yep.
and it's a hard dog to stop. Especially in his prime. In his prime, man, it was he was beating people before he got in there. Like
Hmm.
these guys didn't want to fight. Like
Yeah.
they would go in there already knowing the fight's over, man. And that whole just the mindset, the mental games that he played on
Hmm.
people is just a whole nother level.
Gotcha. All right. Am I more likely to see you drinking coffee or an energy drink?
Energy drink,
Do you have a favorite?
unless unless it's like a one flavored coffees. I like them all right.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Bucked Up. That's my favorite.
There we go. I'm a big fan
Yeah,
of the new Pump and Grind.
yeah, yeah. Go order you
It's a
some
good,
Bucked Up. Use code word Warmonger 20. Save a little money.
there we go. Right on. All right. Favorite Rocky movie?
Um, Man, that's a tough one. It's been so long since I watched them. I don't even know. Probably I don't know if it was the last one. I don't know if they made another one since then. I'm thinking it was the last one where he's like out there, his son's like an adult, and he's like yelling at him. He's like, "It don't matter how hard you get hit. Or it doesn't matter how hard you hit.
Yep.
It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving, keep going
Yep.
forward." That's that movie was for a movie. It's not very often that a movie is an iconic movie
Yep.
and then 20, 30 years later they remake it and do as good or better. And
Yeah.
that was one that I felt like they killed the newest one that I saw. At
Yep.
least there may have been one that I missed or something, but that
I
one was
agree.
amazing. And
Yep.
he was like coaching that little kid, and he had the dog named Punchy. Yeah, that was a great movie.
All right. In your bathroom at home, does the toilet paper feed over the roll towards you, or are you one of those people that has it go down behind?
One time, I never really knew what you're supposed to do, but one time I heard beards are cool and mullets are not.
There you go.
So forward over the front.
That's the exact
Okay.
same thing Jason Mayhem Miller said. Beards.
Did you really?
He said the
I've
exact
listened
same
to part of
thing.
that, but I missed that. I missed that part of the podcast. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
he sure did. All right. Are you a dog or cat person?
Um, Dog more so, I guess. I never really had that many tons of interaction with cats. I think I've only owned maybe one, but I have for a very long time wanted a like a Bengal or like a Savannah cat, like one of those big indoor cats. The thing about cats that I really like, I'm not huge on domesticated cats because they're kind of assholes, but like cats are the most agile, athletic creatures on the planet, dude. Like, especially those savannas, you'll see they'll just jump up on top of a door frame, like boom, and he's
Like
just sitting
nothing.
up on top of the door. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, even your regular house cat, can jump 8 times its body length or whatever. It's something crazy. So I love the athleticism of cats, and I really, really like big cats. Just never had many domesticated cats, but always been a huge, huge dog person.
Gotcha. All right. It's game day. Who do you root harder for, the Tar Heels or the Blue Devils?
Neither one. Have zero connection. Zero connection.
Gotcha.
I was born in North Carolina. Lived here until I was probably first grade or kindergarten or first grade, and then went up north for a minute, and then moved to Tennessee. And the majority of my life was in Tennessee, from 6 years old to 32 or something was Tennessee. So it's Vol Nation, baby.
There we go. Okay. Favorite animal at the zoo?
I like the Oliphant.
Okay.
Yeah, the Oliphant is probably my favorite one.
Cool.
I like snakes too. Elephants are just the coolest creatures to me. They're just so massive and like gentle, but also like they just have this nice mix. Like they're most of the time very, very gentle. But if you get in between a mom elephant and a baby elephant, she will destroy you,
ragdoll you like it's nothing.
Yeah. And but then at the same time, they'll come just like let you climb all over them and do whatever, and super versatile animals too. Like especially like in Asia. I know one of your questions is the kickboxer or blood sport question. One of the movies that kind of got me, not to jump ahead on you, but one of outside of those two, this was a later on movie, but Ong Bak was one of my favorites. Tony Jaa, Ong Bak, the Protector. He had 3 or 4 of them, but in those movies, elephants were a massive part of those movies where he interacted with them and used them and fought with them and stuff like that. And I've always thought that part of the culture in Thailand and in those areas was really, really cool. So that's an animal I've always wanted to. If something that I've always wanted was to have some kind of a sanctuary, like a animal sanctuary, and to have a couple of elephants that'd be gnarly.
That would be awesome. Let's see here. Another one, both in their prime, GSP or Anderson Silva?
Man, that's a really, really hard one, honestly, because, I feel like we could have seen that fight. And so I was a massive fan at that time.
Yeah.
A lot of guys now, they know who they are, but they don't really remember or weren't really that involved with it then. So a lot of times you kind of get just like a candid answer, or like, I don't know, the same answer over and over, kind of, just like the common perception is Anderson's bigger. He's a striker. He's probably going to finish GSP, is what I tend to hear a lot. And I think that's definitely possible. But the biggest difference I think that people don't really account for is the grappling of GSP and just the fight IQ. The man is so good at adapting his game plan from one thing to the next. His grappling is so high caliber, especially for somebody who didn't wrestle in high school and didn't grow up doing that. His MMA wrestling and his grappling is just something that we really haven't. I don't think we've seen it again since then. Even with the Khabibs and stuff like that, their style of wrestling is a little bit different. They're super dominant, but the athleticism that he uses to create that wrestling and the way that he mixes in the wrestling and the striking, to head kick you and then double leg you right off of it. Just that mix up, I think, would have given Anderson all kinds of trouble. And I think GSP would have been patient. One thing that was really tough, in Anderson fights is he did amazing if you were coming after him. If you were just bull rushing him and trying to take his head off, his counter striking was
on point, so he would
Forrest
just back
Griffin.
up, Yeah. But if you didn't want to do that, if you wanted to Damian Maya it, then it was going to be a very boring fight.
Mhm.
And, I think GSP probably could have turned it into a very boring fight that he won, just based off of the mental acuity that he has mixed with the grappling. Obviously, Anderson's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but
Mhm.
it's not he doesn't focus on that. He's got like
Sure.
two submissions ever or something like that. So it would be extremely hard for him to submit GSP. And then getting that man off of you, I think, was one of the hardest tasks in the sport.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yeah, I'm good with it. Yeah,
Okay.
I eat it with I don't just go order it. I don't think, but if it's there, I'll eat it. Pepperoni
Gotcha.
or pineapple. I mean, pepperoni or ham.
Okay. All right. You called this one. Which movie do you like better, Bloodsport or Kickboxer?
Probably got to go with Bloodsport if we're
Yep.
talking originals. They had like a few more of each, but I think I got more into the Kickboxer movies as the sequels came out. Neither one of
Mhm.
them had good sequels, but Kickboxer, I felt like the sequels were a little bit better. But the
Yep.
originals, I think the scenery, the kumitai and all that
Yep.
was just something about Bloodsport, and
Yep.
I was I was like, I don't even know when those came out, but I was probably like a year or two old when those came out. So when I was watching them, they were already pretty old movies. So that's why I say like I watched them and have seen all of them and stuff, but it's been so long now that I don't remember the ones that really molded me. I think were
Mhm.
like Karate Kid and
Okay.
and then the Kickboxer movies as they got older. Like the ones 4, 5, and 3, 4, and
Mhm.
5. As I was older and can remember more of how they how it came across to me the first time I watched it. Those were impactful too,
Mhm.
but yeah, Karate Kid was always a big one, even though it was also old as
Yeah.
well. But it was a big one. Just, I guess it's the area that I lived in. It was more popular,
Gotcha.
and I think probably being 4 and 5 and 6 years old, it was hard to get your parents to be like, "Hey, want to watch Bloodsport?" But
Yeah,
Karate
that
Kid
makes
was a little,
sense.
yeah,
There you go.
Karate Kid was a little more suitable, I guess. Maybe I don't know.
Thank you, Ralph
But
Macchio.
yeah, I mean, I still watch it. I was watching it last night. The
There you
the
go.
new the new
The new
ones.
one.
Yeah, Cobra
Awesome.
Kai.
All right. Who wins in a street fight? You or Jake Paul?
Oh, definitely me. Yeah,
Hell yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Awesome.
he's a big boy. If we were going to get into a sanctioned boxing match, I'm sure that he would probably win that. Because I mean, he's not a boxer and he hasn't been fighting forever, but he has all the money in the world and can, afford the best nutrition, the best
Yep.
coaches, and he can focus on it 100%. So the guy has gone from A1 beginner to decent level pro boxer
Mhm.
really, really fast.
Yep.
However, I don't care how big you are. If we're in the streets, it's we're fighting, baby. You're losing kneecaps. We're getting dirty.
Getting hit
I'm
with
gonna do what I gotta
rocks.
do. Yeah, yeah. We ain't. Yeah, I'm probably not gonna punch you. You know what I mean? I might just kick your knees out. I might. Who knows? But
Get on you, bite your face.
yeah, yeah. It's a whole different ball game.
Yep.
When it's out there, it's a lot more dangerous. One
Yep.
little mistake, you don't think people don't think about this a lot, but I feel lucky to have never had this happen. But one punch, like say the way that Cole fell, if I hit somebody out here in the street and they fall like
Mhm.
that, they
They
might
die.
die. Yeah,
Yep.
and
I have a
luckily,
friend from high school doing life for exactly that, hitting a
yeah,
guy at a bar parking lot, and the guy hit his head on the concrete and died.
yeah. I mean, I've thought about it 100 times. Like, man, that could have, and I've watched people's head bounce off concrete,
Hmm.
and just got lucky, and wasn't the
Yeah.
one. But yeah, man, that's a scary thing. So
Yep.
if I'm in the streets, I ain't taking those. I'm not taking any chances. I'm not letting you get too close. I'm chill sawing in that ass.
There you go. What is something that you really enjoy that maybe people don't know about you?
I think there's not a whole lot. I'm not a. There's not a whole lot about me that's a secret to people close to me for sure. I've always been the type of person that was pretty much an open book. I think you can learn from everybody, and the more open we are with each other, the more we can all grow and learn. So I don't know that this is going to come as a complete shock to people who know me, but people who have just come around with this knockout and stuff, it may become a bit of a surprise. But I would say that my hidden talent or gift or something that I really enjoy and do well that people wouldn't probably think is I'm a bit of a baby whisperer and an animal whisperer. So yeah, if there's a baby around, it's probably going to end up with me, and that's something that kind of throws people off a lot. I think is they're like, what do you like? You fight people all day, and
Get
you're
away
just
from
like
my baby.
yeah, you're just over here, or like people who just that don't know, they're like, how are you being so sweet right now? And like, then you're gonna go out there and kill somebody later. But for whatever reason, I think honestly, I think what it is that we're just a lot closer to the same brain length, brain frequency. So we just get each other a little bit better than.
Gotcha. There we go. That's awesome, man. I want to give you an opportunity. I know we've talked about struggle a lot, and you've given your opinions on what's helped you. As you know, the reason I do these interviews is to inspire people who are going through those struggles. In your own words, for someone who's going to watch this, if you could look them in the eye and share a message with them about not giving up, what would that message be?
You know, it's so easy in life to get discouraged. Like everybody has their shit. Like my shit is my shit, and your shit, and everybody's got theirs. And nobody that I know has had an easy life or had things just handed to them. And if they did, it probably wasn't really worth it. Anything that you find in life that's really worth having and worth keeping, it doesn't come easy, and you have to be able to fail and learn from that and get up and try again in order to achieve those things and in order to see it play out and come to fruition. So it's really easy, to get discouraged and say, you know what? And, one big thing, I guess, that I don't think about a lot that just popped into my head, but people are going to tell you can't do something just because they can't do it. They don't know anything about you. They don't know what you're made of. They don't know the inside of you. They know them, and they know that they're weak, and they know that they couldn't do it. So they don't want you to be able to.
Yep.
So, it may be people looking out for your best interest and thinking, look, you don't say it's fighting. It could be anything, but say your passion is fighting and you don't want to go to college. You don't want to have a regular job. You want to compete. You're going to have to figure out how to survive. But, just because your parents or your loved ones are saying, you can never make money doing that, they might be right. But
they might be wrong.
They might be wrong, and there's a million other ways to make money at this than just to be a professional fighter. You can coach, you can, there's tons of things. You can work, for promotions, have promotions. There's a million things, but you'll never find any of them if you quit.
Yeah.
And, when you're passionate about something, it's not anybody else's place to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. You know what you want. And that's what, I believe that you should always strive for that. And if it looks like, it's too much and you're never going to make it. And, just remember that there are people who are going through the same thing and they're still pushing and still trying, and I could have quit a million times. Obviously. I mean, we talked about a multitude of things and there's a million other things that we didn't get to, but, it would have been easy to quit life in general or, quit pursuing this passion and just go get a regular job and live a regular life. But that's not what I wanted. It's not what I felt like I was meant for. And, had I just done what everybody said or done the normal and quit when it got hard, then I would have never found the success that I just found. you know, and I I have always had a very strong self belief and um, that I had this coming and that was unbreakable.
Mhm.
And it's not everybody has that, but I implore you um, to start loving yourself and really understanding that you are giving it your best, and as long as you're doing your best and trying, eventually something's gonna happen. It might not be the thing you want to happen, but
Yep.
something's gonna happen because of it, and something's gonna pay off. Like just kind of an example of that is the last thing I'll say, but you hear we're especially my generation, your generation, we were told you got to go to college, you got to get a degree. If you don't, you're never going to make any money.
Yep.
Okay, well, all of our friends did that, went and got business degrees and this degree and that degree. And out of hundreds of them, I know two or three that are working with their degree.
Yep.
But what it did though was it showed these companies that you had the gumption to finish something out.
Yeah.
You didn't quit. You were able to keep going. So even though I know a lot of people that got degrees that are working with nothing to do with their degree, having the degree still got them into the field that they're in
Yeah.
because it showed, because they pushed and pushed and pushed and didn't give up, that opened up another door. So, if it's fighting or whatever, you push and push and push, there's no telling what door that may open. And it could be something that you never even imagined. It could be some business opportunity that it couldn't have nothing to do with fighting, but you'll never see those come to fruition if you give up. And nothing great comes easy. I think anything that's really worth it, you're gonna have to fight and fight hard and not stop. So, I might never make it to where I want to make it to, but I've made it further than anybody ever expected. And
That's right.
They can't take that from me. I refused to listen to the hate, I guess, or the negativity, and now I have the opportunity to look back at them all and say, "What do you think now? You think I should? You think I should have quit?" Most of them are singing a different tune now for sure. But this is kind of off subject a little bit, but kind of the same thing. People don't really think about this, but if you're, say you're the Lakers and you start the season and you go 0-5 in your first 5 games, that means nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody goes anywhere. Your fans are still there tomorrow. You lose one fight in MMA and it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah. You lose 5 in a row and people are like, what are you doing? This is stupid. Why are you even doing this? You're terrible. You don't know anything about the sport. One person has to win, one person has to lose. You're going to watch this football team later who's going to end up, 3-12 this season, and you love them. But if I go 3-12 in a sport way harder than that, much more dangerous, you're going to talk shit. But we can get into it right now, and you're leaving on a stretcher. It's just a weird thing to me how people don't really think about. You only get so many fights. It's not like you get to fight again next weekend if you lose.
Yeah.
So the losses here are a lot more important. They mean a lot more. But depending on your personality and what you can do and the inspiration I think that you can bring to people, those losses don't determine anything.
Exactly.
I can have an upside down record. I could never win another fight in my life. I could lose 5 more fights in a row, but you can't take away what I did already. And that's going to bring inspiration to people and already has brought so much inspiration to so many people. I mean, the amount of people that I've talked to that, it's helped them in one way or the other is crazy. Like I told you a story yesterday. I would like for people to hear this. I just think it's cool, but I've got some family that lives on the other side of the country. We're a close family. So my aunt and uncle live in Arkansas. Their son lives in Oregon. And he's my cousin, and they always lived over there. But we saw each other once a year, once every couple of years or whatever. But his son is now like 16, 17, 18, has had a lot of issues and been in some trouble and stuff, I think. But he hasn't been over here in many years since he was probably 10 or 12, 10, 11. So I don't have a relationship with him or whatever. And after the fight, he had gotten back with his family and is back home now. He had left for a little while, and he came in. He said, "Mom, you got to see this. This guy last night, he broke his record for the world's fastest knockout. Watch this." And he showed it to his mom, and his mom said, "Colin, that's your cousin." And he's like, "What?" Like, had no idea.
That's awesome.
I've got my stepsister live in Pennsylvania, and like the next day they're like, "Dude, this is crazy. Just everybody at work is talking about this knockout last night." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's my brother." That's I
awesome,
think that was one of the coolest things for me to see was the people who, there had been many doubters, naysayers, and people saying you couldn't do it, but the ones who have watched me and have known that this was coming and supported me this whole time, now watching them be like, "Told you," where were you at? Don't come over here now. We're the ones who've been here. Like, that's my guy. And seeing their excitement and what it does, seeing them light up, man, and fulfilling, all the time and effort they've spent supporting me and making it all pay off that was awesome, man. And my daughter, on top of that, like, she'll, I don't know that might try to get her not to watch this one, but she says that she gets bored and she just goes on YouTube and watches all my interviews, and so that just her being proud. Like, I never really thought, there was many years where I thought that what I was gonna do to make my daughter the most proud was to survive. And now it's like I've got this accomplishment that she can always look at and think, "That's my dad."
Yeah.
And so
that's right, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was massive.
I'm so happy for you, dude. I really
I
am.
appreciate it.
Let's see here. Outside of fighting, setting world records, and sharing your time with rednecks on YouTube, what else do you have going on in your life? What do you do when you have free time?
Here in the last couple months, I have gotten into like video editing and trying to kind of content creation type stuff. I've never had a ton of hobbies outside of work and my family has that's all I really had time for. And I wasn't gonna sacrifice my family for other hobbies, I guess, necessarily. But now just trying to survive without having to go back working 70 hours a week in the sun. I've been trying to get into that side of it, and man, it's not easy to get into, but I've definitely learned a lot about software and editing and all kinds of stuff, and networking in general. So it's been something that I've been really focusing on in the last few months, outside of training. And with these injuries, I'm focusing a lot more on coaching right now. I'm not really in their training because I don't have a fight, and I'm not trying to further my injuries or whatever. So
Right.
doing a lot more coaching right now, some cardio work, and just trying to keep this thing going and capitalize on it as much as possible. One thing that you don't really think about is that when something like this happens, like that day, that night, for the next few days, it was everywhere. I mean, it was massive at that point, but we live in a society where there's a revolving door, something new's happening every day.
Yeah.
And so to keep that in the spotlight or in people's in front of people, it isn't easy, and nobody's going to do it for you, so like, just because you do something special, it's like I haven't been brought to any events and introduced to these people and met this person, or there's none of that. Like, if you want to meet somebody, you got to grind and you got to figure out how to make that connection. Nobody's doing you any favors, no matter what you did for them. So yeah, that's been a lot of it. Now is just learn how to get out there, man, and I like I told you, then some of the people that you interview, I mean, everybody that you interview is big names and people who have done crazy things in the sport, and you're doing the top interviews out there, in my opinion, right now. That's not
Oh,
like,
thank you, man.
I mean, if you're thinking about not like on MMA Journal or MMA
Right.
Junkie or like on some big news outlet, for a dude doing it himself, you're doing way bigger than anybody else does, and that's not an easy thing because you can't just. It's not as easy as just reaching out and them saying, "Oh, let me open this message from this random dude." Like
This random
most of
toothless
that
guy
stuff
in
doesn't get
Arkansas.
opened. Yeah, most of the stuff doesn't get opened, and like, but there's a reason they're opening yours, and then the same kind of thing is like, there's a purpose behind this show, and that's what's opening these opportunities and opening these windows for you.
I agree.
Even like with what I just did, and everybody knows my name,